Hello, my name is Mauro Lepore, and I'm going to talk about documenting packages with Roxygen 2 and Markdown as well. This lesson was developed by Hadley Wickham and RStudio and delivered at a workshop called Tidy Tools. Our packages are documented at two levels. At the level of the functions, you can use Roxygen to basically document your R files and eventually transform them into HTML files that are reader friendly. And at the level of the entire package, you can also create some documentation. For example, the readme.rmd file and the news files are examples of that. Markdown is a very useful way of formatting text with simply, text characters. So if you want to use it to, for example, type something like this and create bold text and create links and create chunks of code, then if you haven't heard of Markdown yet, probably you can go to the Help tab in RStudio and find this menu, Markdown Quick Reference, and you'll learn a lot in a very short time. Probably in 10 minutes you are already going to be able to do pretty much everything that you see here. So now I'm going to talk about functions, documentation for functions with Roxygen 2. Roxygen 2 transforms a special type of comment that you type in R files into HTML files. It does that through files called RD files, which you don't need to know much about. This is what documentation with Roxygen 2 looks like, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment. The special documentation character here is the hash and the single quote, and that creates a comment that Roxygen will interpret and will eventually transform into that HTML file that you saw. And there is a bunch of tags that are extremely useful in creating the documentation that you need for your functions. You don't need to memorize these tags because Roxygen 2 provides a skeleton that you can simply fill. This is what RD files look like, but you don't need to know much about them. And eventually this is what the reader will be interested in reading. It's very reader friendly. The workflow is quite straightforward. You simply modify an R file and press Command or Control Shift D, and that will run the function DevTools document. And once you do that, you can simply do !, topic name on the console, and that will pop up the help file. Before you can do that, first you need to load all the code in your package, and you can do that with Shift Control L to run the function DevTools load all. And then once you do that, each individual file will be basically documented, but if there is any link between two files, this workflow won't give you the links. For the links, we are going to see what else we need to do in just a moment. So I'm going to show a project called hatcall. It's a package that Hadley put together for the class. I have a link here for you to go ahead and open an rstudio.cloud project so that you can experience exactly the same environment that I'm going to show you now. It will look something like this. So the first task of the class is to fix some typos in the documentation and verify that that works. So I'm going to show you that. I have here open the documentation of this is a Roxygen documentation for the function @call, and I'm going to do some changes here. For example, add a full stop here at the end and fix a typo here in position. There are a few other typos, but with this it is enough to show you how this works. I'm not even going to save this file. I'm just going ahead and clicking and hitting Shift Control D. Now hit Enter to save the file, and that will run the documentation process. Remember that before we had to press Shift Control L to run DevTools load all, and then we'll be able to use the keyboard shortcut Shift Control D. Now I have already documented my functions. I can do question mark and topic name, in this case add call, enter, and that should pop up the help file of this function with the changes that I've just included. And there you go, there is the full stop here, and position has been fixed. So this is basically what the way in which Roxygen interprets the text that you type on your R files. The first sentence is going to be transformed into the title of the help file. The second paragraph is going to be the description, and any other paragraphs after that is going to be the details of the help file. All these tags are extremely helpful in producing the useful documentation for R functions and other objects. But you don't need to memorize them. I'm going to show you a template that you can use to fill the blanks, basically. For that, I'm going to show you how to document a new function, in this case, add calls with an S at the end. So the function that we were using before was add call, but now I'm going to search for add calls with control period. I pop up the go to file function menu and then start typing add calls, enter, and I go to that function. As you see, this function has no documentation, so stepping on the name of the function, I press Shift Control Alt R, or you can go to code, insert Roxygen skeleton. That's also available just here. So this is where you could start, typing what the function does. That's the title. This could be a description. This could be details of my function, and here is my parameter. Might be a data frame, and more stuff here. This returns a data frame as well, and more. So I'm going to go ahead and do Shift Control D, save the file, and now question mark add calls, and that would show the documentation that I've just created for this function. Okay, the skeleton that we mentioned before, and now we're going to talk about how to use Markdown syntax in your Roxygen 2 comments. So you need to just run this function, and then Markdown will be available for usage with Roxygen. That means that all the syntax that you are used to using with Markdown is going to be available for you. So let's go ahead and run that function. And now I could do, for example, the function, my function, maybe I want to make my function code syntax. So if I do that and press Shift Control D and save the file with enter, that will run the documentation again, and I can refresh the help file here. And there you go. You can see that fun now has, I need to pay close attention here, but the formatting of fun is now on the style of code. If we want to create links between two different functions through the documentation, then we need to add this intermediate step. We need to press Ctrl or Command Shift B or hit the button Install and Restart. I'm going to show you that through adding some special tags in the documentation of add call. So I'm going back to add call, and here I'm going to use, for example, a link to cbind, and what else I'm going to add, because this function is very closely related to add calls, I'm going to refer to it right here, and I'm going to also create a family of functions that do X, Y, Z, and these two tags I'm also going to pass them to this other function. So add calls and add call are related, so from add calls I want to refer to add call and vice versa, and both functions belong to this family. So go ahead, Shift Control D, save the files. I'm going to build the package with install and restart this time. It's taking a little while, and now I can do question mark topic name, for example, add call, and see in what way the file has changed. Here you see that now cbind has a link, and that the section add the section C also has a link to, in this case, to add calls, and this other line was created by the tag family. Okay, there is another very cool way of kind of saving some typing and keeping things together. You can document two functions in the same file with this tag, rd name. So if I, instead of documenting add calls, if I decided to simply refer to the documentation of, there you go, of add call, I could do that. So this what we'll do now. I'm going to press Shift Control D. This will put the two functions into the same file, help file. So I've already documented. Now I'm going to build, and now the topic that I'm interested, or the topics that I'm interested are both documented in the same place. So add call is the name of the help file, but you can see that the two functions, add call and calls, are documented here. So if you type question mark add calls, it will take you to the exact same help file. And we are coming close to an end. Next I'm going to show you that you could inherit specific parameters from one function to the other, or specific sections, or you can inherit everything if you want. So let's go ahead and inherit everything from add call to add calls. So here I'm going to do inherit everything. So that's another way. So I'm going to create kind of two separate help files. Each function will have its own help file, but the documentation is written in only one place. Shift Control D, save, install and restart once the documentation is completed. There you go. Let's install and restart. And now I'm going to call the topic add calls again. And now you see that add calls has its own help file. What you read here in the help file is exactly the same that you would read in add call, but you actually haven't typed anything in the documentation of add call. So that's a big saver, right? So you inherited all the documentation from add call into our add calls. And well, that's bringing us to the end of what I wanted to show. If you want to learn more about how to document with Proxygen 2, of course you can read the documentation of that package. And what I'm skipping from this lesson is how to document data, classes, packages overall. And I'm also skipping how to document with vignettes and, for example, README files and news files. But that's all for now, all I have time to show you today. And this was work from Hadley Wickham, and the license of this lesson is OK to share.